August 24th, and we're Open Space Committee presentation tonight about the Open Space and Recreation Plan. We're being videoed and we're available on Zoom. So, okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay, so thank you all for being here tonight, either in person or over Zoom. As Sue just stated, this is our Open Space and Recreation Plan Public Workshop. This is part one on Wednesday, August 24th. We're probably going to run until about 8 o'clock tonight, and then we'll have part two on Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Old Douglas Town Hall. Okay. So tonight, we're going to talk through what the purpose of an open space and recreation plan is and how we got here, what this committee has been doing. We'll go through some of the plan highlights. We'll go through some of the survey results, and then we'll briefly discuss the goals and objectives that this committee came up with based on their interest and the interest that we gathered from the survey results. And then at the end, we'll talk about sort of what the next steps are to getting this plan approved and actually going forth with some of the actions that we'll come up with. So this is the Open Space Committee. Our members are Sue, Lisa, Becky, Kathy, and Gordon, and I'll just let them briefly introduce themselves and discuss why they're on this committee and why they believe this open space and recreation plan is important for the town. And we'll just start up at the top here.
Hi, my name's Sue Perkins, and I've been on the committee many years, and this is our big opportunity to have help to get this plan and recreation plan done so that we can get grants. I've been on the committee for a long time, and hopefully this will be a big advancement for us.
Gordon Larrabee. I'm relatively new to town, but I'm very strongly in favor of open space, green space, place for people to get out and enjoy fresh air, and I'll work hard to do whatever we can to bring that.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Mozinski. I've been on the Open Space Committee several years as well, but I'm a big advocate for open space and conservation property. I am also the president of the Metacomet Land Trust, which is 15 communities, many of which already have the Community Preservation Act and work very hard to preserve open space in their towns.
I'm Kathy Richards, and I've been in town about 27 years. This is my first year on the Open Space Committee. And I have horses, dogs, bikes, and I like to use all the open spaces all over town. I always feel like we're so lucky to have them, so I'd like to see them preserved.
Becky Gallagher, I've been on the board for a few years, and I like trails.
Great. And I realized I did not introduce myself. I'm Danny Marini. I am an environmental planner with the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. We are helping the town with this update. Typically, I work on sort of anything environmental or natural resource related, so I work on a lot of open space plans, municipal vulnerability preparedness, trail projects. And I have to say, this committee has been very active and engaged since the beginning of this process. So what has that process looked like? So there's been a couple different steps that we've gone through. We started off with just organizing ourselves. This is a standing committee, so they've already been organized and have been working on other open space related projects. But the town received a planning assistance grant and collaborated with CMRPC to help with the update of the open space and recreation plan. Once we started that process, we started gathering some data on the community profile, gathering demographic, housing, income, and other data from the U.S. Census. We've determined some environmental issues and other concerns that we want to highlight in the plan, as well as gathered some data on water quality and water resources, have done an inventory of some open spaces, and have begun our ADA self-evaluation of the town-owned open space and recreation properties. Additionally, as a part of this open space and recreation plan process, we have to have and want to have community input so that we can build a plan that's representative, not just for our needs, but of the needs of everybody in the community as best we can. So we've chosen to do that through two different avenues. One was a survey that was available via SurveyMonkey, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation. And the second community input opportunity is right now, the public forum. And we've broken that off into two different parts, one being this presentation tonight, and the second part will be what we call the walk shop on Saturday, where we'll walk through some of these posters that we have lined up tonight and interact more about what you want to see in the town, what actions or recreation opportunities you really enjoy about the town, and what you'd like to see implemented in the future. Once we close on the public forum parts, we'll take all the information that we gathered, we'll take some more of the input that we have from the survey, and we'll build a 7-year action plan. And that'll create this layout that this committee or other committees in town can work towards to start improving our open space and recreation opportunities. And once we have all that together, we'll put it all in a big document. We'll give a presentation to the planning board for their support and a presentation to the Board of Selectmen for their support as well. And then we'll also post this plan on the town's website or somewhere else accessible so that we can get public comment from anyone who's interested in reading it and providing further comment. Once we've gone through all of that, we'll do an initial submittal to the state for their review. They typically come back with some comments that we have to address, so we'll review those comments, address anything that might need changing, and then resubmit for that final approval of the open space plan. So what is the purpose of an open space plan? Why are we going through this effort? So open space is important for the economic future of a community. Open space and recreation plans can obtain the benefits of development while also protecting our environmental assets. They aid in preventing communities from overwhelming their available resources. And more importantly, communities with approved open space and recreation plans are eligible to apply for a few different grants. Parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities grant, which is used for either acquiring land for a park or renovating an existing park. Additionally, you can be eligible to apply for a land grant, which is a local acquisitions for natural diversity grant. And for that grant, that's to acquire land to protect it under a conservation restriction, so you're protecting this open space land. And additionally, there are some other state grant programs that you will become more competitive for once you have an approved open space and recreation plan. So we'll start off with some highlights that we've gathered so far. This map here, and I apologize if it's a little bit small to see, but just this shows where Douglas is within the region and within the state. As you can see, we're about 40 miles from Boston, 46 miles from Springfield, and 16 miles from Worcester. So relatively easy access to some major metropolitan areas, but still far enough out that we don't see a lot of the traffic that those areas might bring. The total population in Douglas is 8,938 people. 11.2% of the population is 65 years and older, and 25.2% of the population is under the age of 18. And this is really important to keep in mind because these two different demographic groups are often missed when we're planning open space and recreation opportunities. So when you're thinking of some ideas of some missed activities or facilities that we have, or even programming, we want to keep those different groups in mind so that we can plan for recreation opportunities for them. And if you look in this graph here, we have an age distribution graph for Douglas. The largest age group here is from the years 45 to 54. So you want to keep that in mind too. In the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to see a larger group of an aging population. So again, we want to keep that group in mind for when we think about what opportunities or what actions we want to implement through this plan. Next, we want to talk about race, language, and disability. These are other groups that we often miss when we're planning open space and recreation opportunities. So in Douglas, by and large, the largest race that we have are white alone, though we do have some Black or African American, some American Indian or Alaska Native, some Asian, some Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander, and some that are either another race or two or more races. So even though our largest population does identify as white, we still want to think about other minority populations and think about what their recreation needs might be. Additionally, we want to think about what languages are spoken at home. Again, 95% of the community speaks English only, but we do have 2.9% that speak Spanish, 1% that speak other Indo-European languages, and 1% that speak Asian and Pacific Islander languages. So we might want to keep this in mind if we're doing some programming to think about other languages that we could adapt that program into. And finally, want to think about types of disabilities. So within the town of Hookdale, 4.1% identify as having a hearing difficulty, 1.5% identify as having vision difficulty, 3.6% identify as having cognitive difficulty, 4.6% have ambulatory difficulty, 1.5 have self-care difficulty, and 3.9 have independent living difficulty. And again, we want to keep this group in mind because some of the facilities that we have or programs that we have in place might not be accessible to these persons. So we want to keep that in mind for coming up with new actions or more inclusive and accessible recreation opportunities for the folks that are in town. This is pretty much a blank map, but I'll explain what it's supposed to show. So this is the environmental justice map. So in Massachusetts, we identify environmental justice communities, which are large community block groups that are either minorities or have limited English proficiency or have low income. Now, we don't have any community block groups in Douglas that have a lot or a large portion of those different demographics, but you can tell up in this left corner here, Oxford, it's highlighted in yellow. So they have a group up in that lower portion of Oxford that does have a large minority population. That doesn't mean that because we don't have them within our town that we shouldn't think about them, especially we have some in some other neighboring communities. So again, another couple of demographic groups that we want to keep in mind to make sure that we have enough opportunities for everybody in our town, not just a small few. And this next map, pretty self-explanatory, is our zoning districts. So there are different zoning districts in the town: commercial, industrial, rural agriculture, residential, or a couple different residential, state forest, and then village residential and village business. And so this just shows where in town those activities are allowed and where we could try to push in some more open space and recreation opportunities in those different areas. For income and employment, so the median household income in Douglas is $114,213, which is more than the median household income from Worcester County, which is $77,155. Poverty rate in Douglas is also less than that of Worcester County. So in Douglas, the poverty rate is 4.1%, and in Worcester County, it's 9.7%. And the employment rate in Douglas is 69.0%, and in Worcester County, it's 63.0%. So overall, Douglas is a little bit more wealthy, has a little bit less poverty and more likelihood of having employment. That said, we do want to keep in mind our lower income populations and make sure that our recreation opportunities are accessible and affordable for everybody in the town and anybody who might be visiting from outside of the town. And then this graph here just shows the employment rate from 2014 to 2020. It's been pretty much staying the same. There was a gradual increase from 2014 to 2016. It dipped a bit in 2017, went up a little bit in 2018, and then has started to decline. So something to keep in mind. It could just be that folks are retiring. So that's where you see that decline. But again, you want to keep that in mind for having an aging population, that we want to increase recreation opportunities for that demographic group. Now moving more into the natural resources of the town, environmental resources of the town, we'll talk about the geology, soils, and topography. So landscape in Douglas is characterized by many rounded hills, small ponds, some steep slopes, and exposed ledges. Elevation ranges between a high of about 900 feet, though not exactly, in the western part of town, and a low of about 320 feet in the eastern part of town. And soils include Canton, Hollis, Situate, Woodbridge, Millis, Paxton, and Whitman, Muck, Ridgebury. So for Canton, that's characterized by deep, well-drained soils developed in loose or very stony glacial till. Hollis soils are very fine, sandy loams in thin deposits of extremely stony glacial till underlain by bedrock. Situate, Woodbridge, Millis, Paxton, it's a mouthful. Soils are characterized by moderately well-drained with hard pans at a depth of 1.5 to 3.0 feet from the surface. And Whitman, Muck, Ridgebury are characterized as fine sandy loams and have a very hard layer at a depth of 1.5 to 2.5 feet from the surface. And this map here shows our soils and geologic features. Again, I apologize if it's kind of small. There's a lot on this, but what we can do is we can save this presentation and upload it, so if you want to look at it later, you can zoom in and see. But all these different colors here just show the different soils and how well they drain. So really dark soils are very excessively drained, versus when you look at more of the light blue or light teal colored soils, those are very poorly drained soils. So there's sort of a gradient there of different soils in the town, as well as some highlighted areas for prime farmland soils, better for agricultural or farming needs. Douglas has many water resources, so it falls in line with a number of different watersheds. It's within the Blackstone River watershed, the Mumford River watershed, French River watershed, Clean River watershed, and the 5 Mile River watershed. And that's really important to keep in mind because you're getting water and runoff from all these different areas, all these different river systems, and you're contributing to some runoff and flow of water into these different river systems as well. Really important to keep in mind, especially when we think of action ideas of collaborating with maybe some neighboring communities or other communities within these watersheds to better protect them in the future. Some notable surface waters include Wallam Lake, Manchog Pond, Whitten Reservoir, Crystal Lake, Wallace Pond, and Mumford River. And this map here, it's our water resources map 1. So this shows all those different watersheds that I was speaking about earlier. As you can see down here in this pink, you've got your 5 Mile River watershed. You've got a little bit up here in this western corner here in the French River watershed. You've got the Blackstone River watershed. That's the larger main watershed, as well as a Mumford River and the Clear River down here as well. So that's just showing you sort of every bit of town is getting water from these different locations, so something to keep in mind for our environmental concerns. And the next, water resource map 2, this shows more of what I like to call infrastructure, our water infrastructure. So it shows some different community groundwater well points, and some different approved wellhead protection zones, some DEP approved zones, and additionally some 100-year flood zones to think about when we have some increased storms where areas might be flooding more often. For vegetation and wildlife, we've got a few different common species that you can find in the town. So for vegetation, some common tree stands you might find are oak, maple, birch, beech, pines, spruce, and hemlock. Some common plants you might find are mountain laurel, some wild azaleas or low bush blueberries. And in more swampy areas, you might find alder, buttonbush, dogwood, willow, water lilies, and cattails, just to name a few. Some common wildlife, birds you might find are blue jays, chickadees, turkeys, and ruffed grouse. Some common mammals, gray squirrels, red squirrels, chipmunks, skunks, fisher cats, and some common fish are bass, pickerel, and perch. Again, not a full encompassing of all the wildlife and vegetation that you'll find, but these are the more common species. And then if you look at the table to the right, again, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a little bit small, but these are your rare, threatened, and endangered species that are in the town. You have wood turtle, Tuckerman's pondweed, slender cottongrass, scarlet bluet, sandplain Gerardia, ringed bog haunter, pond shore smartweed, pink sallow moth, pine barrens bluet, one flower scleropus, marbled salamander, long-leaved panic grass, Hessel's hairstreak, eastern whip poorwill, eastern box turtle, chain fern borer, and attenuated bluet. Those were all a mouthful to say, so I probably said some of those wrong, but definitely a lot of rare, threatened, and endangered species in town. Really important to protect the habitat that these species thrive in. And this right here is our habitat features map. So these sort of light green areas that you see scattered around the town are your Biomap 2 core habitat. So that's core habitat for some of those species that we mentioned earlier. You have these more what I'd call a yellow-green color is critical natural landscape. So again, really important habitat and landscape to the town. And then these purple dots here are certified vernal pools, and the yellow dots are potential vernal pools. And these have really important breeding habitat for certain species. And so if they're certified, they come along with additional protections. If they're not certified, they don't have as much protection as the certified vernal pools. So again, another action idea to keep in mind to go through and try to certify some of those potential vernal pools. And then the dark green areas around town are mass DEP wetlands. Again, very, very important wildlife habitat, very important for flood storage. And again, they have some protections, but we do want to keep them protected from development as much as we can. And this map here is our open space inventory map. So this shows the open space in the town currently, and it's broken out by ownership level and protection level as well. So these, lighter green colors is state-owned land, so that's your state forest. This bright green is municipal land, and then yellow is private land. This vertical cross-hatching is conservation restriction, so it's protected open space land. And then horizontal, the cross-hatching is agricultural preservation restriction, so it's protected farmland, so it can't get developed. It's maintained as a farm. We have a couple of different identified these colored triangles. So these blue triangles are Chapter 61. That's a forest program, so it's not protected in perpetuity, but there is limited protection on those land to maintain it as a forest area. These sort of pink triangles are Chapter 61A, so very similar, but it's for agricultural land. It's limited in its protection, but it does maintain it, at least for now, as agricultural land, and gives the town first right of refusal if the owner wants to sell. And then, kind of hard to see here, but this sort of yellowy green triangles are Chapter 61B lands, which are for conservation or recreation lands. Again, limited protections, but gives the town the right of first refusal if the current owner wants to sell. So you have an opportunity to maintain it as such, or they can sell it to whoever wants to buy it. And then these purple lands are either town-owned lands that aren't identified as open space or recreation, or they're undeveloped vacant lands. Okay, so that was some of our plan highlights, not a full encompassment of what's going to be in that plan, but some of the larger bullet points to think about when we're trying to come up with our action plan and action ideas. Now we're going to the survey results, which is, a reminder, was our first public engagement opportunity. If you didn't have a chance to answer that survey, don't worry. We'll take your comments today or on Saturday so that we can get your ideas down. So the survey was available to take online via SurveyMonkey. It was launched on April 14th, 2022, and closed June 15th, 2022. So it was open for a good chunk of time. We extended it a few times so that we could get some more input from everyone in the town. The survey was advertised online via the town website, Facebook pages, different email blasts, some virtual newsletters, and paper newsletters, as well as paper flyers were posted around town advertising the survey and the QR code that we had attached to it so folks could scan it and answer it on their phone if they wanted to. And in total, we received 316 responses. So that was a pretty decent response, probably one of the largest that I've seen in all of the towns that I've worked with. So really good turnout with that survey. We won't go through all of the questions. There was about 22 of them. It would probably take us all night to do that. But I did pull out a few highlights, again, to get us thinking about some different action ideas that we might want to consider in the future. So this question here, how strongly do you support Douglas protecting, acquiring, and/or improving town-owned land for the following reasons? I won't list them all, but our top three were to protect habitat for Douglas's wide diversity of flora and fauna, which is mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, as well as plants. Number two was to preserve the water resources in town, so that's groundwater, wetlands, and any surface waters. And our third top was to provide areas for passive recreation. So that might include bird watching, walking, hiking, biking, things like that. Our next question here is, what should Douglas's priorities be for open space and recreation expenditures? And we asked them to rank them from most important to least important. So again, I won't go through all these answers because there's a lot. But I'll talk about our top three. So number one was improving passive recreation opportunities, such as trails on existing conservation land. Number two was acquiring conservation lands to install new recreation opportunities. So that could be constructing new trails or constructing new wildlife viewing points. And number three was improving or expanding wildlife habitat and wildlife corridors, which are often lost when we start developing our towns. Third question, what do you consider to be the biggest unmet open space needs in Douglas? And again, we asked folks to rank those from most needed to least needed. The top answer was additional protected woodlands, meadows, or stream corridors to protect the diversity of flora and fauna. Number 2 was conservation areas that serve as educational and research areas, so potentially a spot for an outdoor educational classroom. And number 3, protection of agricultural land. And the fourth question that I want you to think about, what do you consider to be the biggest unmet recreation needs in Douglas? Number 1 was multi-use recreational trails. Number 2 was hiking and cross-country skiing trails. And number 3 were bike lanes within the roadway. And then we also asked folks how important it is to be able to travel to open space and recreation destinations in Douglas by walking, biking, automobiles, or public transportation. Being able to access these facilities and destinations by walking and by car was the most important to folks who answered the survey. Biking was second, or I guess third important. Public transportation was not as important, though there's not really a lot of public transportation opportunities in town, so that makes sense that it wouldn't be as important. But this is something to keep in mind so that we can make sure that we have sidewalks or trails to get to some of these destinations, since folks want to be able to walk to them, or have ample parking and good parking so that folks could drive their cars to these different locations. Now moving on into our draft goals. So like I stated earlier, this committee worked for a long time coming up with what these goals are, which is going to be, what guides our plan, what guides our action plan, and what guides this committee and the rest of the town for the next 7 years as they think about and improve our open space and recreation opportunities. So a lot of this came from the survey results that we got back, and also just some things that we knew about or we asked about from other boards and committees. So our draft goals, we have 5 of them. Number 1, to preserve the rural character of the town. Number 2, to protect the town's natural resources. Number 3, to build the climate resiliency of the town. Number 4, improve the town's recreation opportunities. And number 5, increase public engagement, knowledge, and utilization of the town's resources. So with each of these goals, we have a set of objectives that go along with them. So our goals are really sort of overarching general topics. Our objectives are a little bit more specific, though not too specific. And then after tonight and after this weekend, when we have the second part of our workshop, we'll come up with some more specific action ideas for each of these objectives and goals. So for goal number 1, preserve the rural character of the town, we have 4 objectives that we came up with. Protect and promote local agriculture, retain private forests and trees, maintain historic character and scenic resources, and prioritize open space preservation. For goal number 2, protect the town's natural resources, we came up with 3 objectives. Fortify surface and groundwater resources from adverse impacts, maintain and increase wildlife habitats in corridors, and retain the native ecosystem and reduce urban pollution. Goal number 3, build the climate resiliency of the town. We came up with 3 objectives here as well. Reduce flooding and stormwater concerns. Number 2, strengthen the awareness of extreme temperatures and drought impacts. And number 3, reduce impacts caused by winter storms and severe storms. Goal number 4, improve the town's recreation opportunities. Again, we have 3 objectives to help build to this goal. Number 1, maintain and expand active recreation facilities and programs. Number 2, promote and expand passive recreation opportunities. And number 3, provide recreation opportunities to a diverse range of interests and abilities. And for our last goal, increase public engagement, knowledge, and utilization of the town's resources. We came up with 3 objectives for this goal as well. Number 1, expand and promote cultural and arts opportunities and events. Number 2, increase the utilization and awareness of town's resources. And number 3, develop local and regional partnerships. So now that we've talked about sort of what our highlights are, what our public engagement results are, and what our draft goals are, what are our next steps to getting this plan approved and to going forth with improving our open space and recreation resources. So first and foremost, part 2 of the workshop will be this Saturday, August 27th, at the Old Douglas Town Common. And you can show up anytime between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. It's a workshop, so we won't be sitting down and having a presentation. We'll have some refreshments there. We'll have some of these posters that are around the room here, some pictures that you can vote on, and the maps that you can interact with and highlight some things in town or write down some of your action ideas. So you don't have to stay for the whole 2 hours. You can stay if you want to, but you could just pop in, write down some action ideas, get some refreshments, and go home. Like I said, after we do that, we're going to pull in all the information that we gathered and build our 7-year action plan, and then we'll put that into a larger draft of the open space and recreation plan. We'll review the draft, make sure it's in good condition, and then what we'll do is present that draft to the planning board, to the select board, and then we'll also have it posted for public comment so that you all can view it and read it as well and send in any comments that you might have. I expect that to be sometime in late September, early October, just a guess of how quickly we'll get through that. And then once we do that, we get the plan in a place that we like, that the rest of the town likes. We'll submit it to the Department of Conservation and Recreation, or DCR, for their approval. Like I said, they usually review it, come back with a list of comments that we have to address. So we'll address those, give it our review again, make sure that it's still representative of what we decided and what the town decided was important, and then we'll resubmit it for final approval from DCR. At that point, the town will be eligible to apply for land grants, park grants, land and water conservation funds, and really just you'll have a roadmap of where you want to move forward with open space and recreation improvements and opportunities in the future. So we'll start working on those, once we have that approval ready to go. Any questions? It's okay if not. I know I threw a lot at you in a very short amount of time. Well, I forgot to mention at the beginning, but we do have a set of maps here for those who are attending virtually. A couple of different maps that I showed you tonight, I blew up so that you can mark them up if you want to, identify some highlights or some concerns. If you've noticed any flooding in town or any other environmental issues, feel free to mark those on the map. Or if there's any unique features in the town, anything you really like about the town, again, feel free to mark those on the map. We will have those available at the walk shop on Saturday. So if you're attending virtually and you're able to attend in person on Saturday, you'll have an opportunity to interact with those maps then. And then in the back corner over here, we did have a photo contest going. So some people submitted photos, and we're going to vote on the top one, which is going to be the cover of our open space and recreation plan. So if you're here tonight and you want to vote, we've got some post-it notes. You can write down which one you want to vote for, drop it in the bag, and this will be available on Saturday as well. Again, if you attend in person, you'll have an opportunity to write down what photo you want to win to be the cover. All of the photos will be in the plan, but we're just voting on that top photo to be the cover photo. And then additionally on Saturday, we're going to have a couple other different boards and sticky pads to interact with so that we can get more of your action ideas and some more targeted actions for those goals that we mentioned. And then just some general inquiries about what you like about the town's open space and recreation and what you wish the town had or you want to see the town improve going forward. So lots of opportunity to engage on Saturday if you want to take some time to think about it and come out on Saturday. And if you aren't able to attend, this is my email address here on the screen. Again, my name is Danny Marini. I'm with CMRPC, helping the town update the open space and recreation plan. And my email address is dmarini, so that's DMARINI @cmrpc.org.
Are the maps going to be available online?
Yep, so the maps will be available. Like I said, I will turn this presentation into a PDF. We'll get it posted on the town website somehow, and we'll have the maps as well. These maps are in draft form, so we're making some edits to them, but once they're finalized, we'll make sure they're up on the town's website. Any other questions? Again, it's okay if not. I threw a lot at you very quickly. Well, again, if anything, oops, sorry.
I just want to ask that if you're interested in the maps, please do review them, because there are a lot of nuances that don't always translate. And sometimes we spend a good chunk of our meetings just looking at saying, how can we better make this visually understandable to the public? So any input on the maps would be terrific.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, if there are no other questions or comments, I want to thank you again for coming out on a Wednesday night. And, you know, your interest in you know, any ideas you have on open space and recreation, we really value, we appreciate, so we're not just talking to an empty room. So thank you again for coming out. And if any questions or comments pop up, feel free to shoot me an email or, you know, attend one of our open space committee meetings. Thank you.